Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. It's Rustabout Collector here, and today we're taking a look at the all-new Hasbro G.I. Joe Classified Rock and Roll action figure. I've been really looking forward to getting my hands on this all-new classified figure. I got mine from Hasbro Pulse. I want to say it's still in stock. I will try and link that down in the description in case you haven't picked one of these up yet and this review maybe convinces you that you need this in your life. But we're going to open this up and we're going to take a look at it. We're going to even compare it to the original V1 rock and roll from back in the 80s. And of course, we're going to cover all the bases with articulation, sculpt work, and all the accessories that he comes with. Now, unfortunately, this is part of that plastic-free packaging. I know they are switching back to having windows for most of the lines going forward, but this one fell in that realm of plastic free, so we have the render of the character, not the actual window. On the side, we have this really nice artwork. As you can see, it is number 71 in the series. On the back, we have some really cool detail shots. It does show close-ups of some of his things like the tattoos. And on the side, we have this QR code, which apparently just takes you to the shop on Hasbro Pulse. I thought it was going to bring up something a little bit more interesting, like some data about his special abilities, but yeah, it just took you right to the Hasbro shop. But enough about the packaging. Let's break this figure open and take a look at the figure itself. Alrighty, so here he is all out of the packaging, decked out in most of his accessories. There's a few that are interchangeable, which we will go over. Really quick, I just wanted to touch on that even though this is plastic-free packaging, I do really like this box that he comes in. It's all really nicely printed. It looks great. This is absolutely fantastic artwork of the character rock and roll. Like with the Hasbro Black Series murals on the side of the box, I really do think that they're missing out on an opportunity to do like t-shirts or posters or something with this artwork because it's really well done and I think a lot of fans would enjoy that. But anyways, I digress from that point. Let's take a look at this awesome action figure. Now I will say one of the first things I noticed with this character out of the box is that this is probably the most modern military style character we have gotten in the G.I. Joe Classified line. He has very modern radio equipment, helmet, tactical gear here. Of course, things like the belt and other stuff are kind of generic. That could be any which way, but things like his helmet and his sidearm here, as well as the integrated knee pads into his combat pants, are very modern military, very much something that you would see in the real world. And I'm really enjoying that upgrade to the G.I. Joe Classified series. I know starting out they kind of went futuristic, sci-fi with some lasers and stuff. This is much more real world, very much more grounded, and I do appreciate that approach. Looking at this figure as a whole, I'm really impressed with all the detail going on here. Of course, he's got the normal stuff, you know, belts and straps, these really cool crossed ammo bandoliers. But what he has that's a little bit extra in my book are these absolutely awesome looking tattoos running up both arms. He's got a full sleeve on this side and a full sleeve on this side with lots of skull motifs and, you know, just filler and stuff like that. It looks great, and it looks even better because these are pinless arm joints, so that just makes this much more seamless, much more realistic, and I'm so glad that they waited to do a character like this with arm printing like this until they had that technology. I think the pins wouldn't be too much of an eyesore, but it would leave kind of an ugly little hole in the middle of these really nice tattoo prints. Beyond that, it's pretty standard, pretty basic, just some green combat pants with some, you know, knee pads, some boots. There is probably a fair amount of reuse here, as is common with the Classified series, but overall, it looks good. They do a really nice job of reusing parts, but using them in unique ways so that it doesn't feel like carbon copies of other characters. One other really nice element with this figure is the face sculpt. Of course, these aren't face prints based on any real person or anything, but the sculpt work here is absolutely amazing with the detail on the face and the beard and the hair. But then what really sets this off is that there is a paint wash going over all the hair that just really stands out that sculpt work. You can see all the individual strands and it just makes it all pop so much more, and I really appreciate that. And I almost missed probably my favorite little detail on this figure. Right here on his bicep, he has the most classic tattoo of all time, Mom, encased in a little heart with an arrow through it. This man, even though he's a fighter, he's still a mama's boy at heart. Now, of course, this figure is based on the 82 version of Rock and Roll from the old 3 3/4 inch O-ring figures, but they have seriously upgraded this figure in a big way. Now, of course, there is the obvious fact that this is a figure from the 80s with much older technology and, much more simplified parts, paint apps, and that sort of thing. But I also just appreciate the elements that they've brought in with color. This tan detailing on the shirt and then just having the green on the more exposed areas. This is a very modern style of combat shirt where this lower area has more ventilation, and then typically like a plate carrier or a combat vest will be placed over it, and then this green area would be either just green or camouflage. So it's very modern, it's very tactical, and I think the designers made the perfect call here to update that a little bit, because otherwise you just have a green figure. There wouldn't be a lot of detail or interesting elements. This just breaks up the character that much more, and then you have all the little brown details and straps and things that just, break it up even that much more. That said, I still feel like they've captured the essence of the character. They even have pouches where he has pouches there on the leg. They, of course, have the crossed bandoliers and things like that. But ultimately, they've taken this very simplistic design, this very basic 80s action figure with a lot of great nostalgia and a lot of great vintage elements to it, and then they've just brought it in to more of a 21st century style, a more Delta Force SEAL Team operator style, and it's absolutely fantastic. I think they've done an excellent job here, and I hope that this kind of translation style that we see going from the basic old school to the more modern tactical version, I hope we see more of these types of translations. I think it's very effective and it just looks fantastic. So now we got to go over all the accessories on this figure, then we'll touch on articulation, a few comparisons, and we will wrap this video up. Basically going from the top down, first off he has this removable helmet. It is cast in a soft plastic, even though it does hold its shape pretty well. They've done an excellent job of balancing the scale of the helmet and the scale of his hair. They haven't made it look too matted or too underscaled, and then the helmet doesn't look too large and over the top and just, ridiculous when it's actually on the figure. There are some paint apps here as well. The earmuffs are hit with that brown paint, as well as this little pouch on the back. And then of course right up front we have this cool little Hang 10 written on there in paint, implying that Rock and Roll is probably a surfer dude when he's not out fighting Cobra. For weapons, we have this really nicely sculpted M60 LMG. It actually has a fold down bipod, which is pretty sweet. I enjoy that little detail. Those are also done in that green color, so once again it kind of keeps within that theme of colorways for each character. There's also a few different ways that you can have this weapon equipped. The first is with this little box of ammunition and a small short belt of ammunition that goes inside of that box. But you also get this longer belt, and you can actually just feed that directly in to the chamber there, and then he can have it kind of coiled on his arm like this. He could be hip firing it like a Rambo style action scene, and that's just a great addition to this character and just fleshes out the personality a little bit more depending on how you want to have it displayed in your collection. He also comes equipped with a sidearm, which is really nicely detailed as well. It's just kind of a generic, maybe like a 9mm, doesn't really have any distinct design that I can tell, but still, he holds it nicely. It's got good sculpt work, it's got good detail, and as usual, you can just slip it right back into the holster when he's not using it. For the most part, all of the pouches on his belt are just molded into them, but this radio does come off on just a little peg system there. It's also in a softer gummy plastic, and he can hold it, or he can just have it here on his belt. Additionally, there is another peg hole here, so you could have that on either side, and there is a peg on this ammo box, so you could put this on there as well, depending on where you want to have those arranged. Now he also has replaceable hands, so you can pop out the trigger finger, and you can give him just a standard balled up fist. It gives you the great option to have him giving an old right hook to Copperhead, or maybe Cobra Commander himself. And another thing worth pointing out is that when you remove these hands, you can also remove these little wristbands. These are just kind of like leather straps with the little buckles. And on this arm, you have the extra ammunition belt. So those are removable in case you want to see more of the tattoo ink. You just want to have him bare armed a little bit more. That is an option for displayability. And I really do appreciate that little extra element of functionality. On the production side of things, I'm sure that means that these forearms are much more usable for other characters because they don't have the ammo belts molded in. But on the display side of things, it gives you some more options for just customizing your character the way you want. And the other interchangeable hand is this rock-on symbol. Pretty classic for somebody like this, when he's, being a surfer dude and all that. Of course, there's also the possibility that maybe he's secretly Spider-Man and he's about to, thwip some Cobra guys and, take them captive with his webbing. Hard to say, you never know. Somewhere in the multiverse, I'm sure that there is a Delta Force operator style Spider-Man, and maybe it's actually rock and roll. And also, I think in some of the production photos, I think we saw him posed like this, where that like lower skull tattoo on the back of his hand could be used as sort of like a mask or something, like an intimidation factor. I don't know. It's an option. It's a posing option that you could play around with, but ultimately, you know, there's just so many different ways that you could pose this character with so many different weapons and just, you know, adding and taking away little straps on his wrist. I absolutely love how jam-packed this figure is with accessories. Alright then, now on to articulation. Double ball jointed neck gets you the side to side, forward and back. He's got butterflies at the shoulder that do give you a little bit of flex forward, hinge and swivel all the way around, out to 90. He's got a bicep swivel that can be spun all the way around. Pinless double jointed elbows gets you a crunch well into like a 45-degree angle there. Ab crunch back, ab crunch forward. Ball joint at the waist, giving you a lot of range there as well. Classic G.I. Joe classified drop down legs. You can drop those hips down. You can splay them out, forward, back. There's also a thigh swivel there, double jointed pinless knees that can crunch all the way back to there, swivel at the top of the boot, and then a hinge and rocker at the foot. Pretty standard stuff, all things considered. Oh, and I should mention that the hands are up and down on the right trigger hand and in and out on the left hand. I try to breeze through articulation on these G.I. Joe classified figures because typically it's pretty stock standard. There's a lot of parts reusage, and unless there's some really bulky, you know, armor bits or something like that that could inhibit some movement, they pretty much have the same range of motion, and honestly, it's a pretty solid range of motion. These figures have pretty much nailed the 1/12 scale action figure design, especially now that they have pinless joints and they just come with so many different accessories. Even though I don't collect a ton of the 1/12 scale figures, Classified has well and truly got me hooked. I don't do much Black Series. I do a bit of like the Spartan collection from Jazzwares, but G.I. Joe Classified is probably where most of my pre-orders for 1/12 scale figures are at. I love these figures. I love their designs. It brings a lot of the nostalgia that I had growing up with the old G.I. Joe figures into the modern day and updates it with better articulation, less fragile joints for sure, because I broke many a thumb or crotch piece on the old G.I. Joes, and then it just makes them, I don't know, just so much more detailed and lifelike, and I love it. So that about covers the all-new G.I. Joe Classified rock and roll action figure. Honestly, this is a good figure to start with if you're kind of on the fence about trying out this Classified line. This figure has all of the elements that I personally want out of a G.I. Joe Classified figure. It brings an old design into the modern day with updated gear and updated articulation. It's got some truly fantastic paintwork with the wash on the hair and all of those absolutely amazing tattoos on the arms. And of course, the weapons are fantastic as well. They've kind of changed away from those Nerf blaster looking ones into more realistic real world weapons. And yeah, this is an M60, which is more a Vietnam era weapon. He probably in the real world would carry something like an M240 Bravo, but that's really not a big deal to me. I think that just having realistic weapons with realistic accessories makes these figures fantastic. I know I've gushed about this figure a lot. I don't really have critiques on it. Like, it's just fun. It's a good bang for your buck when it comes to the Classified series. They have increased their prices. I think they're now retailing for like $27.99, which does make me pick and choose a little bit more cautiously which figures I get and which figures I don't get. And at that price point, there's a few things that I feel like could be improved. On these straps, you know, the buckles could be painted, even if it was just a simple little hit with some black or silver, especially here on the main belts, you know, just hit those with little paint apps. That would feel that much better. So they have the extra paint apps I want on this armband, but I would really appreciate just a few extra, just on the belt here, on the little straps here. That would really make it stand out. But of course, those are really minor paint apps. That's the type of thing that I'm okay with going in and doing myself. Whereas the main ones, like these highly detailed tattoos and some of the paint washes on the hair, stuff like that, those are done, and those are done exceptionally well. So I guess all that to say, I really enjoyed this figure. I feel like it has a pretty good bang for its buck, even though I'm not terribly fond of those price increases. But let me know your thoughts down in the comments. How you feeling about this line, the price increases, the detail? Are you even collecting this line, you know? You clicked on this video, but maybe you're on the fence and you're trying to find a jumping in point for the G.I. Joe Classified line. Let me know down in the comment. But as always, there's a link down in the description. I'll have a link for this figure down there as well as a link tree which can take you over to my Instagram, where I post toy photography and also other just toy-related content like links to things when they go live for pre-order or order. I like to keep everyone up to date on that so people can get figures in hand. But anyways, if you made it this far in the video, thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful evening, noon, or night, depending on when you're watching this video, of course, and as always, I'll be sure to catch you all in the next video.